In this video, we're going to start looking at forms and form controls and look at some of the ways we can interact with forms and form controls using JavaScript. So let's first start out talking about the basic structure of a form. So this is the form we're going to be looking at. Just has an email address field and a first name field where we can type in text boxes, and it's got a button that says join our list. Now let's take a look at the HTML that would generate this code. So here is our HTML. We have a form. This is the opening form tag, and this is the closing form tag down at the bottom. In between are all the elements on the form. We'll talk about those in a minute. When we open the form tag, we can give it an ID, but we have to give it a name. So in this case, the ID and the name are the same. The ID is email form. The name is email form. We also need to supply an action. And an action is what's going to happen when somebody submits the form. So in this case, the action says join.php. PHP is a scripting language that runs on the server side of an application. So what would happen when somebody submits this form? It's going to take the data from this form and submit it to this join.php script on the server. And that server is going to process that join PHP script using the data that is sent in our HTTP request. So we're sending an HTTP request to the server. It's going to use the data that gets sent from the form and run this join.php script and do some kind of processing. So that's the action that happens when somebody submits this form. Now, we aren't going to be writing the PHP in this course, but you might do that in another course. We're doing the client side of a web application, and this would be something that happens on the server side of a web application. The last thing that needs to be included here is a method. How are we going to submit this request to join.php? How are we going to submit it? And there's usually two options here. Normally it's either get or post. Now when you submit it using get, when you do a get request, it submits the information from your form in clear text. So it's not quite as secure as a post request. As a matter of fact, it's not secure at all, but you have probably seen this in a web browser when you've clicked on things, and you might see something like this. In this case, when this form gets submitted, it's going to call that join PHP, and it's going to get the email address, which came from the email address text box. If we go back up here, email address grace@yahoo.com. It's pulling the information out of there and getting Grace. This is the code for the @ %40, grace@yahoo.com. And the second is first name equals Grace, which is what the user has filled out here. Okay, so that's set in clear text, and you can see that in your address bar when you use a get request. Now, when you use a post request, it is not displayed, and it can be encrypted, and it's a little bit more secure. So what is actually getting submitted out of here? Well, we have a label that says email address that gets applied to whatever input has email_address for its ID. And in this case, you can see that is this input right here. It's a text input. The input of type text has an ID of email address. This is the label for that. And there's the label. And this box is the input box for email address. Okay, so email_address equals, and this was the contents of the text box that got submitted, grace@yahoo.com. And then we have another label for the first name text box and the actual first name text box, which is input type equals text. And its name is first_name, and that's what gets sent here. The very last thing we have is this join our list button, and the button says join our list, but its type is submit. So this is the submit button for our form. When somebody clicks that button, that event automatically happens. It submits the data from the form using this method to this script on the server. Okay. So this one says join our list. When we click it, it will send this to the server, an HTTP request.